Would you like to know how to simplify your finances? Today's guest, Tracy Turtle, will tell us exactly how to do that. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to Alison McWhinney podcast, where we have conversations about business and well-being success. And one area that can cause a lot of anxiety is finances. Today, I'm joined by guest Tracy Turtle. Tracy founded Mandala Jade with a view to helping others benefit from simple living. And previous to this, she spent over 25 years in financial services, initially as a chartered accountant and then in business management and culture roles. Tracy offers a full Simplifying Life service, but today we are focusing on simplifying your finances. To be clear, this will focus on the habits and systems that will help you to manage your money and does not constitute financial advice. Tracy, a very warm welcome to the podcast. Can we start off by sharing your top tips for managing and simplifying our finances so we can stay on top of them?
Absolutely, and thank you very much for having me. So I use in my work, where I'm simplifying work, home or life, a model called CLEAR. And I think this is where we can start and what we can use to actually go through to help simplify finances. So I'll briefly touch it, and then I'm sure as we go through, we'll maybe go into more detail on some of the aspects. So it's clear, so it's clarify your vision. So really, what are your goals? Why do you want to simplify your finances? What do you need to save for? Limit what comes in. So this is talking about, I guess, stop buying things, stop bringing in new subscriptions, just in case things. The E is eliminate. So looking at what your finances look at now and then eliminate what you can. A is assign everything a home. So we're really talking about there, and we'll get into this more, I think, but talking about how you assign and organise your finances as they come in, and then reinforce with systems and habits. So really thinking about the habits of looking at how much you're spending, reviewing it monthly, and just building those habits of knowing how much you are actually spending. So same principles as I would use in a home, that people know about decluttering, but thinking about your finances in that clear method.
That sounds a very useful system, I have to say, because I think it's important to know your numbers in the first instance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's an area where people can feel very tempted to bury their head in the sand, but you need to know your numbers as a starting point and when it's going out and where it's going out, and sort of get a handle on that. What are the biggest financial mistakes you see people making?
So I think it's exactly what you said, right? People burying their heads in the sand, right? And it's not knowing where your money is actually going.
Yeah.
Just trying to keep, just trying to think of where it's going without actually looking at the data that you have. And, treating money and budgeting as it feels like a punishment rather than you're actually saving for a goal. Um, and then other things, things like just spending money little and often here and there, so you don't actually know what's going out. But I think that's all linked to really not knowing where your money is going, and not having a conscious think about what you're doing with your money.
Mm. So if someone wanted to get their finances under control this weekend, as we're coming up to a weekend, where should they start?
Yeah, so it's obviously going to take longer than a weekend, but just in terms of where to start is really that knowing where your money is going. So go into your bank account. Most bank accounts these days actually have tools to see where your money is going. So even Lloyd's do. But there's apps that do it as well if you wanted to download an app that link to your bank account so that you can actually categorize where all your money is going. But the first step, I think, is really just looking at your last 3, 6 months and seeing what all the outgoings are so
Mm.
that you have a starting point. And then the other maybe action is think of those goals. So my C in my clear method of clarifying your vision. What are you actually trying to do? And having that really clear, whether it is I don't know, vision board, depending on how you work, a vision board of what you actually want to save the money for, whether it's a holiday or buying a house or anything like that, or writing down your goals of what you want with the money, because that lays as your anchor to every time you think of buying something, you see visually this, oh no, I'm trying to save for a house or I'm trying to save for a holiday. So I think those two actions to start with, the clarifying where your money is going and looking at what your vision is.
We've touched on budgeting. Can budgeting actually be quite simple?
Well, it can be, right? I mean, it could be as simple as, and I think we'll touch on this a little bit later of how much to save, how much to allocate for spending. But it could be as simple as, a third I'm going to save, a third I'm going to keep. And it doesn't have to be this massive spreadsheet. As I said, some of the apps these days kind of do that budgeting for you, and you can look at that. But yeah, it doesn't have to be a massive Excel spreadsheet. In fact, one of the girls that used to work for me, the way she budgeted was actually she used to withdraw cash and put it in envelopes. And that was her spending, that was her bills, or whatever it was. She had those categories. If you don't like spreadsheets, you don't want to use apps, that could be a simple way of doing it, of literally putting money in envelopes so that you know how much cash you actually have. I know we don't use cash these days, but she actually did that because that was the only way she could properly budget across
Mhm.
her month.
I tend to have a variety of savings accounts and I put money into the different savings accounts. And I think, right, that account is when I want to get a new car. That account is for some other upgrade, so that you're constantly contributing it.
Exactly.
You don't use it until you actually need it, but the money is building up there and earning interest as well.
Exactly. And I think there's a saying to pay yourself first. And what
Yes.
they mean by that is actually from your bank account, pay into those accounts first, and then you know what's left over.
Yeah. And for like major bills like council tax, water bills, that sort of thing, I tend to put those dates in my diary and then work back like in 4 weeks' time I will get the council tax bill.
Yeah.
So that I remind myself I've got that bill incoming that needs paying.
Yeah, exactly. Or do direct debits that are on the same day so that you
Yeah.
know everything's going out on the same day and how much that actually is.
Do you think there are any particular budgeting methods that tend to work best, or is it very personal?
I think it is very personal. And the only reason I say that is because some people like the visual having a spreadsheet and like the numbers side of it of having a spreadsheet. The apps, as I mentioned, work quite well, so that it's on your phone. Some people don't want it on their phone, I guess. And then, the envelope method of actually taking money out and actually doing it in the envelope. So I think it is quite personal how you do it, and it's about experimenting.
Yeah.
Don't stick to one method if it's not working. I think just try and experiment, of what helps you and what triggers kind of help you not to spend money as well.
And how much should people aim to have in an emergency fund?
Yeah, so I guess the textbook answer is probably 3 to 6 months. And some people might hear that and go, that is a lot of money. So I think however much you can have, I guess aim for the 3 to 6 months.
Mm.
But that's not to say that if you can't get there, that you don't do any at all. You know, literally try and start saving little bits of money, and that will add up over time. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people, especially at the moment when there's a lot of redundancies, and it's a scary thought that people only have enough for a month's living. You know, there is a lot of redundancy out there these days, and so we do need to try and be wary of, saving more if we can.
Mm. And what advice would you have for somebody living from paycheck to paycheck?
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm in a privileged position that I haven't had to do this. But I think it is really knowing, and as you said before, don't put your head in the sand. It's really knowing what those outgoings are. You know, little purchases. I was thinking like coffee is now
Mm.
what, £3 to £4, right? And if you have one of those or two of those every day, I mean, it's like a
Soon
thousand
mounts up.
pounds, right? It
Mm.
really mounts up. So it's being really conscious of what those outgoings are. I think, and yeah, making sure you're actually tracking it on a weekly, if you need to, monthly basis, but track those outgoings kind of along the way. And just it's knowing those goals as well. I think it's really easy to think that you're depriving yourself of that coffee, like, but actually, what am I saving for? I actually want to save so I can go on a nice summer holiday.
Mm.
Just having that vision in your mind to start with every day if you need to, of this is why I'm not going to have that coffee today because I want that big holiday in the summer.
Yeah.
And it kind of changes that mindset from deprivation to actually I'm gifting myself, my future self, something that I really want.
Yeah. Now, debt can feel very overwhelming when people are in debt and can cause people to feel very down and depressed. What's the first step, would you say, that someone should take if they're actually in debt now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of charities out there that will actually support. So there's one called Step Change, and there's one called Debtline as well. So and they are there to help.
Mm.
Um, they are there to support you. Don't believe they're not a counselling service at all, but it's really trying to signpost how you can structure your finances, or how to actually start getting out of that debt. So I think the first thing I would say is just get help.
Yeah.
Don't keep it to yourself because that's the worst thing. And there are so many organisations out there that are looking to help and want to help because financial well-being is really important these days, and I don't think we talk about it enough in the UK,
No, we
on
don't.
finances. So
Sure.
yeah, so just really go and get help.
Yeah. And it is possible to get out of debt. I think that's a key
Absolutely.
message, isn't it? You need to take some steps, but it is possible.
Yeah.
We've mentioned the daily coffee. Um, are there any other common financial habits that quietly drain people's bank accounts without them noticing?
Yeah, so things like your subscriptions. So we subscribe for everything these days, right? And then your Netflix, your Prime, your everything. And there's so many of them you can't keep track. So it's ones that that go out every month that are just adding up all the time. So have a look at your bank account to see what subscriptions you've got there. Look at your standing orders, look at your direct debits. What are you paying out every month? Um, the I fall for this sometimes, is those ones that renew annually.
Yeah.
And you suddenly have an amount go out and you go, what was that for? And because it was cheaper in the first place to sign up for a direct debit, but they're annual direct debits, so you have to keep track of it. You generally do get an email, but I think some of them are a bit crafty and don't actually send the email till after they've taken your money. But you can actually cancel it. So if you see an amount going out, go and cancel it if you don't want it anymore. Um, Things like food waste is actually, so I'm really into sustainability as well. So it's not physical money, I guess, but we do waste so much food. So it's thinking about how you're working with that as well. And then just things like providers, we stay with the same electricity, power, phone. I was talking to someone today about mobile phone providers, and the big ones, Vodafone, things like that. You could be spending £20 a month. If you switch to someone like Labara or Leica, there's smart money, you can only be paying £5 a month. So have a look at your bills as well, and look at something like Money Supermarket and see if you can actually switch providers as well. So it's things, and these have all got a theme, I guess, of not being aware of what your finances are and what your expenses are. So that awareness and just being really pernickety about everything that is going out will
Mhm.
just help you not drain, with those little items that add up.
And what's your view and advice on using credit cards?
Yeah, so I'm not anti credit cards. I have them myself. It's how you use it, right? So I do actually use them, but I pay them off in full every month. So that builds your credit history. It's good to have them. I think where the risk is where that becomes that, I guess, gap filler
Mm.
of where you don't have enough to live on, I guess, that you're using your credit card to actually fill that gap. um so again, it's just being really honest with yourself and saying, how are you using your credit cards? Some of them now with 0% interest are great, if you want to use it as a cash flow, but just be careful that we're not using it as a form of debt, because
Mhm.
the interest rate on that is really high. And that's where you can go to some of those charities to review your finances if you are using it like debt.
Yeah. And what about couples? What's your advice on couples successfully managing money together without it becoming a source of conflict and divorce?
Yeah, and it's, I think, so I grew up, so I'm half Chinese. I was born in Hong Kong. And the Chinese we talk about money a lot. You're almost born into it. So I talked about money from a very young age, even to the extent of I never got pocket money, but I actually got money for grades. Like, that's how I got my money. And so we just used to talk about it. And so my friends laugh at me though, because every time we're thinking about doing something, for me it's always, how much is it? And it's not always a good thing thinking about money all the time. But I was trying to get to the point that we don't talk about money enough
Mm.
in the UK. It just seems to get pushed under the carpet, and I think if you can start that relationship with someone else where you're comfortable talking about money, then it's easier to have those conversations about, do we share the bills? Do we have separate bank accounts? What are we spending money on? Um, and just being really open about it. I think it's where people start hiding kind of what they're spending money on, and that they haven't agreed what each can spend money on, or so I think it is just trying to have those open conversations.
Mm.
Now if you've never had those conversations, it's really hard to start that. But I think baby steps of just going, should we have a conversation about expenses? What are we trying to achieve? And I think it's back to the clarifying that vision as a couple. What are you trying to achieve financially?
Mm.
Is it the house? Is it the holiday? Then you're actually on the same side. Um, but but then have leeways of what you can spend money on to enjoy life, at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
yeah. And I think also maybe sometimes conflict can arise if you've got different habits around money. So I know people who see something they like and have got to buy it there and then, rather than consider the financial position. It's a very straight away. And if you're with somebody like that and you're not like that, I can see that being a source of friction. So I think it's about looking at their habits as well and just seeing whether you're compatible on that or not.
Yeah, but also trying to have that conversation, because
Yeah,
if someone feels like, if I was with someone that every time I bought something kind of told you off or whatever, you just wouldn't talk about it, right? You
no,
just kind of hide it. So it's trying to have that open
balance.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. If you have a joint account with somebody and they pop their clogs, um, is it easier that you've got a joint account, or is it actually better to have separate accounts?
Um, I think the joints, I am not an expert on this, so
Okay.
just, but I don't think it matters. I think what's more important is that you actually have a will, and that you have powers of attorney if you need it. So I've spoken to a lot of people recently where their parents are aging and got to the situation where there haven't been powers of attorney in place,
Mm.
and it's really difficult to then work out and get access to the money and to the accounts. So it's the future planning. So more so about whether you have joint accounts or separate accounts. I don't think it matters. I think it's more the planning of the wills and the power of attorney and making sure you have them in place, from now, really.
Yeah. I know when I was growing up, financial lessons were never on the agenda either for school or parents. And I think that that really does need to change. What do you feel is the biggest financial lessons parents could teach their children?
And I think it is just being really open about it, as I said, I think it's been ingrained in me, and I actually have to balance the other way. I'm not very good at spending money, especially when it comes to investing in myself as well for my business. I'm really finding it hard to make those investments. So, but it does mean I'm very aware of my finances. So I think it's from a very young age as just bringing them into it. I think it's the value of money, right? If they think that they can go buy everything and you say yes to everything that they want, then they're not going to learn that value of money. Um, and so it's making sure they're aware of how you're earning that money, where is money coming from, how much you actually earn, and maybe getting them to earn some as well. I mean, for me, it was getting good grades. I'm not sure I'd advocate for that. It kind of gives you some bad um, grounding for that, for having to achieve grades all the time. But or earning pocket money, are you earning pocket money by actually doing chores rather than just being given pocket money? I think not knowing where the money comes from, it's the same with food, right? It's like, weirdly, that kids, unless we teach them how food grows, you don't actually know where it comes from. So yeah, so I think it's just implementing it from a young age, and being more open.
Now, of course, the value, the actual value of any savings we have may actually be affected by inflation and cost of living. Um, what practical advice do you have for coping with these challenges?
Yeah, and we're going through it now, aren't we? The cost of
Yeah.
living and inflation, and that your salary's not going up as much. Yeah, it's really, you don't want to get too bogged down with that, I think, right? It's just, you just have to manage your money in your own way and manage your expenses. There is nothing we can do about inflation. It's not something we can control. So just think about the controllables. Like, what can
Mm.
you control? And the only thing you can control is really what's coming in your salary and what jobs you do, but also the expenses as well. So just managing that. I don't think we can do anything about inflation necessarily.
No. When should someone consider seeking professional financial advice and have a personal professional advisor?
And I think if we're talking about, you know, uh, these charities, I'd say anytime really.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be that you've got £1 million to save and you're working out where to put it. You can have financial advice. All the banks, I think, provide free financial advice. You can sit down with one of their advisors and actually look at your finances and look at your goals and support you with that. They're not there to sell to you. I actually worked for NatWest, so before, they're not there to to sell to you. They actually do want to help with your finances. So reach out to your bank, have a chat about. It doesn't matter what level you are, how much money you have, whether you've got savings, because they can point out things to you like, are you using your ISA allowance, for example? How to actually save, and just different things that you can look at. And also, as I said, the charities before, if you're in debt as well. So I
yeah,
think, anytime you can get financial advice. Doesn't have to be one of these independent financial advisors that you're talking to. Of course, if you then want to talk about pensions and other forms of saving, investment portfolio, then yes, go and seek out one of these financial advisors. Otherwise, go to your bank.
yeah. And I think sometimes people fear that if they go to their bank and their finances are not in great shape, that maybe that raises their profile of having finances not in great shape. Can I just clarify that banks will not look negatively on you approaching them?
No, exactly. Like, they are there to help you.
Yeah,
They're not going to. I mean, they can't affect your credit rating just by talking to them. So
yeah, good. Looking ahead, what financial challenges do you think people should be preparing for over the next 5 to 10 years?
so it's retirement, I guess, making sure that you're saving for the future. But I think we are going into, particularly in the corporate world, I'm seeing more and more redundancies,
Mm,
and AI coming in and technology. I think it is. I'm not an expert in this as again, but we have to be ready, I guess, for any eventuality in losing our jobs. So really starting to save for that rainy day, and also save for your retirement. It's pretty scary. Um, I think there's like 45% of working adults aren't actually putting any money into pensions at all. And some of them may be young, but actually, I think you can start from a really young age to think about that pension and how you're going to live in retirement.
mm,
Because, yeah, as I say, inflation, cost of living, it's only going to get harder, I think. So really trying to save for that rainy day.
yeah. Is there anything that I haven't covered that you think would be useful to share as we wrap up?
Um, I think my main message out of this, I think, is just to really be aware and open about your finances. As you said, don't put your head in the sand.
Mm,
Just be open about it. And if you need help, actually reach out for that help. There's tons of, help out there because it is a big issue. So yeah, get help. and really know what you're working to and what that vision is.
Yeah. Finally, where can people find out more about your work and connect with you?
Yeah, thank you. So I am on Instagram, so mandala_jade. I'm on LinkedIn, Tracy Turtle. But we will leave my website in your show notes as well, which is mandalaj.co.uk. And I have a free guide on there called Simplify Yourself, which talks about my CLEAR method. So that might be a nice starting point, whatever you're trying to simplify, whether it's home, work, life, your finances, it's a good starting point.
Lovely. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been a really useful podcast interview that I'm sure will resonate with people and be extremely useful for them. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. And finally, a request, please. I would be so grateful if you would subscribe to this channel and like my videos. That would be a huge help. Thank you.